Let me ask you a genuine question when it comes down to Monster Girls. How many other different concepts of Monster Girls have we really seen, honestly? We've seen fairly a lot of them, like Cat Girls, Fox Girls, and your occasional Lamias and your Arachnids at times. But to be perfectly honest, we constantly see those Monster Girls, 100%. There's plenty of different shows and manga that exist out there where they just do exist as a concept. But to be perfectly honest with you, there's way more Monster Girls that could be used, and anime just doesn't use them. And to be perfectly honest, if you ask anybody what their favorite Monster Girl is, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a cat girl, or it's going to be the basic fox girl, or it's going to be the basic like mermaid, or whatever the hell is out there that people already well know. So let's look at the characters that isn't necessarily well known and anime should honestly use, because yeah, while there is some anime again that does show them and some actually bring in new concepts for me because I didn't necessarily know they exist, like the salamander chick or the whole trope of egg laying, because that was a thing I needed in my life, honestly. There's way more different types of tropes and styles of Monster Girls that's honestly out there. Hey, case in point, the bogey. Now, if you've seen this girl, you already know what it is, but for those that don't necessarily know, this Monster Girl is very soft to the touch. She's like a damn teddy bear, honestly. And her whole thing is that she wants to help the man get rid of all their sadness, essentially. And basically, it's kind of like, oh, let's say you're an orphan, you never had the love of your parents or something like that. Or maybe you wanted to basically fall for someone, but you know, that didn't necessarily work out in your favor, and now you just have this eternal sadness. If only there was a way to get rid of that type of thing. Not necessarily going to the Orange Hub, not necessarily trying to go buy a prostitute online or just outside of your car. No, not that. Just use a bogey, because they are actually devoted Monster Girls that really will care for you. And the good thing about them is that they actually will take that sadness away, because that's what they're attracted towards, or at least that's what mainly is what they're gonna, you know, go and get you for, essentially. And when it comes down to things, they will do everything to help you get rid of that sadness until you're fully healed, honestly. Even go as far as to use you for, you know, some smashing reasons, and that's the whole kind of the point, essentially. They're just really devoted lovers when it comes down to things, and really just want you to feel better emotionally, and that just kind of is what it is. And if I'm reading the wiki correctly, I believe they will stay with you, and you know, and make sure that you don't necessarily get sad again. So you basically got a giant fluffy ass, you know, person to just take care of you, essentially, for your emotional needs and stuff like that, which honestly, again, damn, would this be nice if I had this. So yeah, definitely a bogey is something that I would say that probably on my damn list of favorite Monster Girls of all time now. And while one Monster Girl wants to comfort you, another one wants to box you. The Hinazumi. Essentially, these are Monster Girls that actually, for the first time, don't really want to smash. They want to just throw down and fight, because to them, that is what, you know, their pleasure is, essentially. And that's what they get out of all of it, and how to get off on stuff, by fighting and raising their fighting spirit. However, just like all Monster Girls, they're gonna get weakened when it comes down to the smashing sessions, essentially. But they kind of get it worse than most, essentially. When it comes down to things, if you encounter a Hinazumi, you will end up probably trying to, you know, fight for your damn life, essentially. But at the same time, you can find ways to weaken them, because they're literally on fire all the time. All you gotta do is just basically dump water on their ass and then problem solved. You can even chuck your whole nut into their face and then they still will get weakened by that, honestly. But here's the thing, when you're clapping the cheeks of a Hinazumi, essentially their fighting spirit will go into you in a weird way, making you really having that, you know, aggressiveness in some shape or form to kind of just forcefully take what you want from the Hinazumi. And that's why I kind of say, well, they kind of get it the worst, because they're not really about that life until they get weakened and stuff, or they get vulnerable. But then at the same time, it's not like they still want that, but their body will take it anyway when it comes to, you know, the nut that's being sprayed everywhere. So it's kind of weird. It's basically like, oh, well, I shouldn't necessarily do this, but I'm going to do it anyway on the male side. And it's for the female, it's just like, well, this is not great and I don't necessarily like it, but I don't necessarily mind getting this because, you know, it helps in some shape and form for me to be a little bit more vulnerable to the guy anyway. And it does help out their bodies in some shape and form. So that's like a weird thing, right? Actually, McDonald's rep paying a Hinazumi is a good thing, kinda? Strange. But again, that's how different Monster Girls can be. But let's go to an actual Monster Girl that people kinda know more about, but still kinda is on the underrated side, which is the Jiangxi, which is also what Chi-Chi is. which is also what Heisenko is. But when it comes down to things, at least in this variation of Jiangxi, they are actually really intelligent, and hell, they can honestly use magic as well. And when it comes down to things, if you know what a Jiangxi is, they are not like your typical zombie-ass characters. They are essentially the type of characters who can't necessarily use their bodies. So because of rigor mortis, they have to just bounce around, and that's why they're known as, you know, hopping demons or hopping zombies and stuff like that, right? But that's stuff we already know. What I did not know was apparently if a Jiangxi ends up touching a woman with their nails, for a temporary moment they end up become dead, and then they turn into Jiangxis themselves, which, how the hell did that happen? But an obvious way to go ahead and fix that rigor mortis and that stiffness in their bodies is by clapping cheeks, obviously. And as more you clap cheeks and as more as nut keep going everywhere, the more they loosen up and actually start you know, doing things normally. Because, I mean, they're already revived people, they just can't move their body in the way they need to. But if you just keep doing that, that's not the only best way you can, you know, keep them moving and not necessarily get them to go back to being stiff. An easier and better way to help them out is to constantly just, you know, make sure they're warm and stuff. Essentially by using your hands to rub on their chest and other areas, essentially. And that's a way to keep them actually moving around and not necessarily going crazy and stuff like that when it comes to the stiffness. No one like a stiff zombie. No one likes that. So when it comes down to things, and if you don't necessarily give them the attention that they deserve, they will just go out of their way to go after you themselves. And then they basically do the same thing that like they did when they first meet you, basically violate your ass. And with all Jiangxis, they all have talismans on their heads, which is basically their orders. You can actually take off the talisman on their heads and essentially write down a different order for them, and they can follow it. But still, nonetheless, they're not going to be completely trapped into it unless they really want to be. So if you write down some lewd characters into that whole talisman on their head, they will follow that shit if they really want to. But again, keep in mind, they're already revived, so if you wrote down something crazy, and if they don't want to necessarily do it, they don't necessarily have to follow that rule. So again, and then you wonder why I like Jiangxi characters so damn much, because they're honestly awesome as shit, they fine as hell, and to be perfectly honest, Interspecies Reviewer honestly really sold me on the idea of a Jiangxi, I'm not gonna necessarily lie. But at least with the Jiangxi, they do get a little bit more screen time than most characters. I can't necessarily say that with the next one, which is the Thunderbird. And no, I'm not talking about the actual Thunderbird that we're all thinking about, you boomer. I'm talking about this damn Thunderbird. And honestly, there's kind of a decent amount to say about the Thunderbird, honestly. For one, you remember the Hinizumi that we talked about recently, where, you know, they're probably going to get used in a way that a lot of people don't necessarily like? Well, the Thunderbird actually welcomes that shit. Considering the fact that A, they like to see a man, and then essentially when they do find the one that they like and shit, they end up just basically violating them on the damn spot, because they like it aggressive and hard hitting. And hell, they have lightning in their damn bodies, which isn't gonna necessarily kill you, shockingly, but it will release some lightning into you, which will be more pleasurable than harmful, and essentially will paralyze you in a lot of lust, to the point they'll just use you over and over and over again. Like, it's actually kind of insane. They violate you, and then at the same time, they also have a countermeasure where if some type of lightning type leakage ends up happening in their body, they will go paralyzed, and then you will most likely be the one that's going to be using them. So it's a McDonald's Rapé Fiesta out here. Like, it's kind of wild with some of these damn monsters, I'm not going to hold you. And apparently, if you end up becoming the husband of one of these damn things, essentially the love and leakage and pleasure and things like that will be 10 times greater than a lot of other, you know, species and races and things like that out there. Which is, again, incredibly interesting, honestly. Like, I was already sold in the moment where I was like, alright, I can like it because they have lightning inside their bodies. I didn't think the lightning was actually going to be something of pleasure. I thought it was actually going to kill my ass, but apparently not. It's going to F me in the ass if that's going to be the case. Also, can I say one thing too when it comes to these monster girls? Every single monster girl outside of Bogey has literally been some type of monster girl that's been violating a man. Can for once, can we get a monster girl that actually does not do that? Apparently not, because we're going into the next one, which is Surara Ona. Or, if you know what that kind of monster girl is, you can kind of relate it to Yuki Onna, which is also like a Japanese folklore urban legend type of monster too, who is like a very cold lady, basically kind of like Shiva except more on the evil side. And honestly, of all the urban legend girls that can honestly just F my life up, honestly, I'll let Hashaku and Yuki Onna be the ones. But when it comes to Sura Onna, she is again a violator of men, because that's all she is. Basically, when she jumps on top of you, she's going to basically give you two choices: either let the clapping commence, or you try to resist and some nonsense happen. If you don't want to get the clapping, then what essentially is going to happen, she's going to basically use ice particles to just F your life up. And while it's not necessarily going to kill you or anything like that, it will make your heart incredibly cold and things of the sort, which you will be craving nothing but heat. And the only time you'll be able to get that heat back is when you end up clapping the girl, and essentially she pours all that heat back into you, but it's going to be full of lustful heat, the same type of feelings and heat and coldness in some shape and form that she feels as well. Because if you're going to be having a cold heart just like her, she's going to be feeling lonely and feeling the, like desperate for it, and that's kind of what you will feel too. So you might need to just go ahead and clap cheeks. Granted, you clap cheeks, your chances is a little bit better, but still nonetheless, she's still gonna get what she wants. She'll be a devoted wife to you, and that's gonna be a nice ass thing. Though when she wants the dick, she's going to get the dick. That's literally how it is. Even if you just like, alright, just give me like a few minutes. No, she commands that dick now, because that's how she is, essentially. So, yeah, wild shit. So if you say yes, you're getting used, and if you say no, you're getting used. Again, there is no winning here. Granted, she is kind of bad, so I'm not necessarily gonna lie. But still, nonetheless, it's like, damn, can I have an option though? Now on to the last one on this damn list, who actually is not necessarily going to be super aggressive to you, trying to kill you or anything like that, but they still will be aggressive in some shape or form, which is the Jub Jub. Are they sexy? Absolutely. Are they actually like very cute and pretty? Absolutely. Will they constantly be horny for you? Absolutely. A little too much to the point it's actually going to be kind of wild. So essentially, when it comes to a Jub Jub and really this type of harpy in general, they actually usually more, when it comes to harpies, are more petite and obviously more lolly-esque. But with a Jub Jub, that's actually just the opposite case. And when it comes down to things, the moment they are like really born, they're automatically just wanting to F a guy, which is actually kind of weird at the same time, but it is what it is. It's fiction. So when it comes down to things, basically just out the womb they come out ready, wanting to have some crazy nonsense action. And when they even see a guy, they just automatically start dripping like a damn faucet. And when they actually pin you down on the ground, they will latch onto your actual junk and will not let go, to be perfectly honest. And the only good thing is, at least your whole thing is going to be just stiff indefinitely. But still, nonetheless, they will not let go. Apparently, it's like perching to them, like how a bird perches on like a bark or tree or like a stick or something. And essentially, that's how it is for them. And sometimes when it comes down to things, they're just going to straight up try to use you, even if they're just basically just laying right there. Essentially, they're going to slam their whole bodies essentially against your whole damn, lower area. And then they're going to just go for it, and that's just how it is. Whether they're just gonna be perched and sitting there, or whether they're just gonna go for it, that just is what it is. And then you're gonna go ahead and be filled up with desires as well, and then you're gonna be the one that's doing the whole nonsense, and they're gonna like that shit, honestly. So imagine like you go to work, right? You have this office job or something, and then all your partner and co-workers see is that some damn weird ass bird lady is essentially just attached to your lower appendage, and then they're just basically just sitting there, and you're just like, hey Bill, how's the paperwork yesterday? Did you get it done? And they're just sitting there, you're just like, my boy, what is this nonsense? So yeah, essentially the Jub Jub is not necessarily someone to be playing around with, because they're gonna be playing with you constantly and they're never letting you go. Even if they were to let go for like laying eggs and stuff like that, they will go half crazy until they get back inside themselves. So yeah, Jub Jubs are absolutely crazy, but they're kind of hot at the same way, so I would allow it. Granted, that would probably be very tiring if they're just gonna be perched on the thing constantly, but it is what it is. It's a sacrifice we all must make. And again, with these monster girls, I really want you just to sit down and think about, damn, we have a lot of monster girls that really doesn't get used in anime. And think about it like this too, right? There's so many characters and types of monster girls that exist that could be used, but just often more than not do not get used. And granted, I understand why in some cases, but still, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't change what some of the stuff is. Even if you have to tone down some of the lewdness, you can, and honestly it'll still work just as well. Like, use these characters. Not every single character in monster girl anime has to be like a fox or a cat or something of the sort. I would like to see new and interesting and weirder type of monster girls, honestly. Honestly, there's plenty of them. If you think the ones I talked about was very crazy and honestly very different, then what about Creeping Coin, right? The one that literally is like a damn pile of coins, but actually can shapeshift and be a mimic and essentially make your lust for money and greed of that to actually be sexual lust for them, and essentially that's how they transfer it over. Or you have things like the Amazon monster girl, who basically is going to be taking everything out of you, essentially banging you in public in front of all these other monster girls essentially of the same species, and then basically have the roles reverse of gender, which you are at home taking care of everything there while they're out there hunting and all that type of stuff. Again, there's wild shit when it comes to monster girls, honestly. And to be perfectly honest, I wish, again, more anime and people were to talk about this type of stuff and bring it up, but they just don't, unfortunately. And again, I get it, but at the same time, damn, would I like to see these concepts be used, honestly. Whoever made Monster Girl Encyclopedia, they were definitely on some nonsense, but some good nonsense nonetheless. But essentially, that's all going to be for this video, so hopefully you did enjoy, hopefully you learned something. And if you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification on your way out. Also follow me on the socials, and if you'd like to donate to the channel, Patreon is available as well. Also, if there's not necessarily that many images of these monster girls, I apologize, because it's very hard to find these images because people do not know what these monster girls are. And until then, it's your boy Jay, sign off. Have a blessed day.